This year has shaped up to be a pretty promising year for video games, but with the buzz around so many big AAA titles like Fallout or Halo, it's really easy to miss out on some of the awesome work being done on indie games. So for this video, I've put together a list of some upcoming indie games that are worth looking out for in the coming year. I've narrowed it down to games that I'm particularly excited for and are scheduled to be released sometime in 2015 or 2016. Alright guys, let's get right into it. This year's E3 highlighted a handful of noteworthy indie games, but it was the vivid and quirky Cuphead that really drew everyone's attention. Cuphead is a run-and-gun action platformer with an art style inspired by 1930s cartoons, and is even hand-drawn using the same techniques used in that time period. As indicated by the title, you play as Cuphead, who loses a bet with the devil and must fight a series of bosses to repay this debt. Along with single-player, Cuphead also offers a co-op feature where you can bring a friend and play as the second player, Mugman. This game is definitely one of the most creative indie titles that I've seen in a while, and I can't wait to traverse the crazy world of Cuphead sometime soon. Cuphead is set to release for Xbox One and PC in 2016. Everyone likes a good dose of 16-bit nostalgia now and again, but with Hyper Light Drifter you can expect a more modernized 2D action RPG. In Hyper Light Drifter, you must navigate a dark, eerie world of crumbling ruins and intimidating enemies as a drifter, a collector of forgotten knowledge and lost technologies. Your drifter is also plagued by an insatiable illness, and must traverse the lands of buried time with the hope of finding some means to a cure. The dark, jewel-toned color palette makes for vivid, eye-catching environments, and the fast, ninja-like combat seems fun and engaging. With Heart Machine's Kickstarter success, we can look forward to Hyper Light Drifter seeing the light of day on PC, Xbox One, and PS4 sometime in 2015. If games like Dark Souls have proved anything, it's that we're a bunch of masochists who enjoy punishment and death in our video games. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that didn't stop the developers at Harebrained Schemes from developing their diabolical dungeon delve called Necropolis. In this brutal roguelike, players must try to navigate the labyrinth of the Necropolis, a magical tomb that guards the treasure of the powerful archmage Abraxas. Necropolis is composed of a low-poly, procedurally generated environment with an ever-shifting dungeon layout, offering a different experience with each playthrough. The combat looks challenging, yet satisfying, and much like the Souls games, players will have to get used to dying. A lot. But with its minimalist art style and surprises almost literally around each corner, I'm excited to see what Necropolis has in store. Keep an eye out for this third-person action game on PC, Mac, and Linux sometime in the coming year. The promise of peace and solitude in the great outdoors can provide some respite from the taxing nature of everyday city life. But in Firewatch, solitude becomes less desirable as the mysteries of the wilderness unfold. In Firewatch, you play as a character named Henry who sought to escape the complications of his messy life by taking a job as a fire lookout in the Wyoming wilderness. Your supervisor Delilah keeps you company via handheld radio, and ultimately seems to be the only meaningful relationship that Henry has. As you explore the unfamiliar forest terrain, a series of strange occurrences give off an eerie and unsettling vibe to this first-person adventure. Firewatch has a bright, vibrant color palette that makes for some beautiful scenery, but what I particularly enjoy about Firewatch are the witty yet realistic dialogue exchanges between Henry and Delilah. And with a believable performance by Mad Men's Rich Sommer, we really start to get a sense of Henry's flawed personality. Firewatch is a suspenseful game about introspection and isolation, and I can't wait to uncover the strange mysteries of the wilderness. The developers at Campo Santo said to expect to play Firewatch on PC and PS4 sometime in 2015.
Why are we even here?
To make sure the damn wilderness doesn't burn down.
No. Our job is to be here when that happens.
If you watch out for fires long enough, you'll eventually see a flame. A flame in the flood, that is. In The Flame in the Flood, players set out on a perilous survival journey as a character named Scout, who must brave the backwaters of a treacherous and procedurally generated river in search of shelter and supplies. Scout's also accompanied by a canine companion named Aesop, who travels alongside on your makeshift garbage raft and can store items in your inventory and sniff out useful resources. Although threats of starvation and exhaustion loom around every rapid and island, there's a sense of charm to this fractured apocalyptic world, which is only enhanced by a beautiful alt-Americana soundtrack featuring an original score from Chuck Ragan. I'm anxious to try my hand at this roguelite survival game, and I trust that the team of BioShock veterans at Molasses Flood will be able to deliver a challenging yet accessible adventure. Look for The Flame in the Flood on PC, Mac, and Xbox One sometime in the coming year. If floating down a dangerous river isn't heart-pounding enough, you can take to the stars and find yourself floating through space in an upcoming indie game called Adrift. The developers at 310 describe Adrift as an immersive first-person experience, which is fancy talk for what I like to call space things that give you the underboob sweats, and yes, movies like Gravity fall into that category. In Adrift, you're an astronaut who awakens to a destroyed space station and a slowly leaking oxygen supply, and as the only survivor of the wreckage, you must fight to stay alive by exploring the debris for resources and attempt to safely return home. This suspenseful space survival game is set to release for PC, Xbox One, and PS4 in September 2015, but of course the developers are also dabbling in VR, with the hopes of having Oculus Rift support as well. Ugh, I can feel the lack of oxygen already. Now, if terrestrial space survival is more your speed, then look no further than the Soleus Project. While on a mission to save a dying Earth, you've crash-landed on a strange and violent planet, and must scavenge for food and supplies in order to survive long enough to phone home. But as you trek across the terrain, a mystery of a vanished alien civilization begins to unfold. There are hundreds of secrets to uncover through the planet's buried caves and tombs, and as a spiritual successor to Teotl Studios' previous game called The Ball, we can likely expect some puzzle solving in the Soleus Project as well. I had played a bit of The Ball on Steam and thought they had some really unique puzzle mechanics that just needed some tweaking here and there, so hopefully this game will act as a more polished follow-up. Look forward to exploring the rabbit holes of the Soleus Project on PC and Xbox One in early 2016.
Control. Come in.
And just when you thought there were enough games set in space for the coming year, we can't forget to add Fulbright's Tacoma to the mix. Set in the near future, Tacoma takes place on a space station a few hundred miles above Earth. The main protagonist, a woman named Amy Ferrier, is searching a station for missing crew members with the help of a computer she calls Odin. Tacoma's cramped space station and seemingly mysterious circumstances give off an eerie vibe similar to that of Gone Home, and for good reason. It seems we're in for another round of Fulbright's environmental storytelling, and I'm interested to see what the former Gone Home developers have prepared for us this time. Fulbright has slowly unveiled pieces of Tacoma over the course of the year, and is planning to release the new IP on PC and Xbox One in 2016. Now, speaking of first-person narrative exploration games, there was another indie game from E3 that caught my attention: What Remains of Edith Finch. This game is a collection of short stories about the cursed Finch family. Players follow Edith Finch as she explores the history of her family and tries to discover why she's the last Finch alive. One by one, she uncovers the story behind each family member's death, with a different setting and tone for each story. What Remains of Edith Finch comes from the creators of The Unfinished Swan, Giant Sparrow, so we can expect a very storybook feel to the game, except this time it'll have a much more creepy, goosebumps feel, rather than the more whimsical storybook experience from before. Look forward to uncovering the mysteries of the Finch family exclusively on PS4 in 2016.
This one is mine.
At E3 this year, we briefly saw a glimpse of a new IP from Aurora 44 Studios called Ashen. Based on the trailer, you play as a faceless wanderer searching for a place to call home in a land covered in blankets of ash caused by various eruptions, hence the name. As an action RPG with a so-called passive multiplayer, Ashen is described as a game about forging relationships. Players can choose to trust one another to potentially increase their chances of survival in this bleak and desolate environment. We don't know much else about Ashen other than that it'll be released for Xbox One and PC, but hopefully we'll get our hands on the game by 2016. Now, there was another charming indie game that caught the eye of many at E3 called Beyond Eyes. I had actually heard of this one a few months ago, so it's nice to see that there's a more whimsical indie game getting some deserved attention. In Beyond Eyes, players follow a young girl named Ray, who lost her eyesight at an early age during a firework accident, and although she's uneasy around loud noises, Ray is content with her life until her beloved cat Nani goes missing. Players must help Ray face her fears of the outside world, using her senses to guide the way. Keep an eye out, or maybe your other senses out, for Beyond Eyes on Xbox One and PC in 2015. Now, I've always had a love for puzzle games, especially first or third person puzzle adventures like Portal or Darksiders, so I've been particularly excited for a game called Chronos, mainly because it's made by Gunfire Games, a team that's almost entirely composed of ex-Vigil Games employees. You know, the ones that made our beloved Darksiders 2 and its remake? Yeah, those guys. At first, Chronos starts out sounding like a typical RPG where the main protagonist must free his land from the clutches of an evil dragon. But to do so, he must navigate through an ancient labyrinth that only opens once a year. If the hero fails, he must wait another year to try again, growing older in the process. The design of both the labyrinth and its bosses seems reminiscent of the Shadow of the Colossus and Darksiders games alike, and I know that with this talented dev team at its helm, Chronos will hopefully have the challenging puzzles that I often crave. The only thing is, it's mainly being designed for the Oculus Rift, and although a PC version will likely be made, I'm a little hesitant about buying VR stuff just yet, but maybe by the time Chronos is released in 2016, the tech will be ready to go. Speaking of puzzle nostalgia, if a game that blends the styles of Ico, Myst, and The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker sounds interesting to you, then you might want to keep an eye out for an indie game called Rime. Rime features the story of a boy who must use his wits to survive on a mysteriously cursed island, and with its dynamic, Zelda-like puzzle solving, you can manipulate the environment and even time itself. You must explore the open world and unveil the island's secrets before ultimately trying to escape. Now, I kinda cheated by mentioning Rime on this list since it doesn't actually have a release date just yet, but we do know that Tequila Works is exclusively planning to release this title for the PS4, and since it looks so awesome, I felt that Rime was worth mentioning. If you can't get enough of these exploratory adventure puzzlers, then be sure to add Vane to your list as well. In the same vein as Rime, see what I did there? Vane is about a strange child stuck in a dangerously sandy environment, inhabited by a mysterious civilization. What's particularly interesting is seeing the child turn into a bird at the end of the trailer, foreshadowing some interesting puzzle mechanics for the game. And although The Last Guardian has finally poked its head from the darkness, it might be worth mentioning that Vane is being created by some ex-Last Guardian team members as well. Vane will be released first for PC and then for the other consoles, hopefully sometime in the coming year. Some games use player choice as a mechanic to make players feel a more personal connection to their gameplay experience, but in Moon Hunters, player choice is integral to the game's mythology. With its nostalgic pixel art style, Moon Hunters is an RPG that focuses on cooperation with other players to tell a unique story. You choose your own adventure as you navigate an ancient Mesopotamian world, and as you try to figure out what happened to the missing moon, your reputation is altered through interactions that ultimately shape the legend your character leaves behind. Get ready to build your own mythology on PC, PS4, and Vita in February 2016.
This darkness is a disease.
According to the game developers at Ninja Theory, the best fantasy breaks down barriers and lets us see the world without prejudice. This is one of the driving principles behind their new game, Hellblade, which tells the story of a Celtic warrior named Senua and her journey into Hell, which in this case is the product of Senua's mental illness. Ninja Theory, the team behind titles including Heavenly Sword and DMC Devil May Cry, are composed of a small team of 15 people who are working on Hellblade under a model they like to call independent AAA, where they have the creative freedom of an indie while still delivering a AAA game experience. And from what they've shown of Hellblade's gritty fantasy world, I'd say this theory looks quite promising. Ninja Theory has also made it a point to be transparent with their development process, and thus has released a series of dev diaries documenting the various aspects of Hellblade's development, which is available on their blog. The Celtic-inspired concept art and environments was enough to spark my interest in this surreal fantasy, and I look forward to embarking on Senua's harrowing journey. Now, Hellblade is set to be released on PC and PS4, but it doesn't have a release date just yet, so shame on me for adding it to this list. But they've made a ton of progress and we even got to see a new trailer at E3, so I wouldn't be surprised if they announced a release date sometime soon, if not the actual final product in the coming year. Plus, it's one of those games that I'm really looking forward to, so I felt it was important enough to add to this list and share with you guys. Alright everyone, those are my top upcoming indie games for the coming year of 2015 to 2016, and I know there's a bunch of games that I didn't mention on this list that are supposed to come out by 2016, but instead of listing every indie game that's supposed to come out between now and then, I decided to narrow down the list to my most anticipated indie games, and hopefully I've sparked your interest in some of these games as well. Now, I've also left off a handful of free-to-play indie games, simply because I'm planning to do a separate video for those, so as soon as I get that video done, I will link that back to this video either in the description or in the comments, so make sure to check that out. Alright you guys, I hope this video has gotten you interested in at least some of the upcoming indie games that you might not have heard about, and like I said, there's a bunch of indie games that I didn't mention on this list as well, so if you want to keep the conversation going, feel free to leave a comment down below. As always, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, this is Strangelove signing out.